Okay, 15 out of 15. I guess we are live. Hello, everybody. Ignore the TV, miss the narrative. Nick, you are here first. Congratulations. You beat Debbie. Debbie's going to be pissed, man. You ruined her whole day.
You're gonna feel like a bump on your knee that's bad. It's the brace that I put on him. And I told him to take it off by midday.
The dings. You got the dings. Docky. J-Bone. Hey, what's up, buddy? I was just thinking about you yesterday, looking at those horrible purchases I made of crypto with you that day. Hey. Deb's going to be pissed, dude. She's not even here yet. Let's go ahead and refresh the chat so I can get a chat number. But I have said hello to all of you so far that I've seen. So J-Bone says Docky Hollandaise says J-Bone. Trendy Nick. Hey, Jay, Doc, and Trendy. You guys are all saying hey to each other. You guys know you can all talk to each other on Twitter. Two-Wheeled Scotsman. What's up, buddy? How's it going, man? Gordon, right? It's Gordon, right? Two-Wheeled Scotsman's Gordon. Let me know, man. Bronco, good morning, Bronco. Debbie, good morning. She's late, but she's here. Completely different market now to what it was when we made those trades. I don't care, bro. I'm still hanging on to them, bro. I hung on to both of those, man, and I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting still. It's been a year, bro. I'm still waiting. Yeah, it's Gordon. You never forget. Oh, good, man. It's Gordon. It's the first trendy. Gordon is the first trendy, guys. The very first trendy from Trendy As Dabbers. He's always secured that. Trendy Nay reporting in. I love it. That's it. So, my mother and I had a good conversation this morning about that gentleman that was the professor emeritus from Princeton University of Russian Relations, talking about in 2015 about how Ukraine was headed for a war with Russia and what America was doing and how they were funding NATO installations and Ukraine was trying to get into NATO and enticing, basically just poking the stick at Russia. And I've made some progress with my mom this morning, finally, a little bit of progress, which was good. It was really good, man. I'm like, she's like, this just gets me upset. I'm like, you know what gets you more upset? Is thinking that all of these poor, innocent people in Ukraine, like they've got no hand in this or that America has no hand in this. And they want to turn you 100% against Russia and not tell you that this was partly America's fault too and Ukraine's fault too. And, it's violent and it sucks. But I told her America does the same thing. We go around the world and we murder people every day with our drones and our rockets and our bombs. I said, look at Yemen. Look at what we've done in Afghanistan and Syria. This is what we do, and just the fact that we're covering the hell out of Ukraine doesn't mean that we haven't been guilty of the exact same things in other countries, but it's funny that people get so mad at Russia for doing the exact same thing. But when America does it, they won't even watch the news. They don't even know what's going on. They hear the narrative, but they don't watch the real news. They don't see what's actually going on. And unfortunately, when you watch TV, you only get the narrative. You only get what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want you to hear. That's it. Nothing else. You're not getting any kind of bias. You're not getting any kind of a different perspective. You're just getting narrative, 100% pure narrative. This is what they want you to think. This is what they want you to know. My mom's like, well, what about these reporters? They go out in these countries and they see the dead. And I'm like, do you know who killed those people? She's like, well, the Russians did. I was like, how do you know it wasn't the Nazi Ukrainians, the Azovs? She's like, Nazis. I'm like, there's Nazis. There's like 5% of them. She doesn't know any of this. So it's just important, I believe, that you get all of the information. Have this building BIOS that has like over 100 pounds of inside it. Besides that, how are you doing? Yeah, Zach Zank, what's up? We don't call it pot here because pot is a disparaging negative word. Like when you go to the bathroom, they call the toilet the pot. So if you're smoking pot, that's basically something you sit on and you shit into it. So we call it cannabis only on the show. Just so you know, Zach, you can join us and call it cannabis too. We love it. That's why we use a term of endearment for it instead of a negative term like weed or dope or marijuana, which is racist and a made up bullshit word. So we call it cannabis. I hope that explains a lot to you. But welcome to the show, Zach. Join us. Yeah, join the enlightened bunch. You'll always have that title. Yeah, the very first trendy, bro. You will. You are the first trendy, bro. So as you guys can see, I got this bong sitting here. It's pretty clean. I went over to my friends last night, and me and my buddy Billy and my other friend, and we got high and we had fun. We talked, but something happened to my buddy last night. I want to talk to you guys about that. A little anecdotal story. We'll get into that in a minute. My buddy Billy. I love when you educate people on the reason it's cannabis. It doesn't help me anymore. It's my trade, man. I've done a lot of work with. It doesn't help me anymore. It's my trade, man. If it's your trade, then it seems like it does help you. It's making you money, right? Well, then you should love it for that. If it's your trade, I don't know. I don't understand what you're saying there. The first trendy, now that's a title. It is. And he comes back to the show. You think about that. He was the first one, and he still comes back to say hello. Even though he's got his own thing going on, he's trying to live over there. Trying to get through life is the way all day with Trendy Nate. Thanks, Seymour. All right, so I got this blueberry. I brought over that OG Kush. I smoked it with my friends. I got them really high. We had a lot of fun. I took a couple of pictures. I'll show you of us hanging out last night. Carol, good morning. Fucking legend right there at Two Wheeled Scotsman. Yup. Hey. Bossing life there. I miss OG Kush. Well, right now I'm going to hit a little blueberry just to get started. And I don't know. Actually, I'm thinking about putting a little dab on top and being special. Lee Spanner. What's up, Lee? From Twitch. Hey, I haven't seen you. It's Pee Wee Lee. Pee Wee Lee, what's up, buddy? Got some OG Kush ATM at the moment. Tropicana cookies, live rosin. Ooh, hoo. Ooh, hoo, 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 ha, hoo, hoo. Wow. All right, so we're just going to take a little bit of this, right? I'm going to do this a special way. I'm going to just try. There we go. You guys can't see what I'm doing here. I want you to see what I'm doing. I'm setting this like this straight up. I'm going to try to melt this stuff right into my bowl. It's perfect. I just did the perfect drop. Look at this. Look at that button. And look at the button on top of that. Wonder Twin powers activated. Zan, form of a glass bong. Jaina, form of ice water. Whatever. I don't know. I can't remember how the one could be water and the other one could be any object or an animal. Form of a live, living, breathing bong. Shape of bong water. Purified, triple filtered. You're smoking Mac 1. It's a beautiful smoke. Also some wax here to dab. Hope mom's well. She is doing well. Hey, Nick. Got swelling in your legs. You call it lymphedema. I'm sorry, Lee. I hope you get better. Haha, I love oil. All right, well, let's go. Let's set this thing on fire. And when it catches on fire, we don't put the fire out. We let it burn. You want to keep the fire burning, folks. All right? I was on the freaking Oracle show last night, and when I was cooking, I tore off my chef jacket, and underneath was your shirt. And I had my back turned to the camera, and all they saw was your face. Docky Hollandaise. That's good. All right, cheers. I hope you guys had fun on Oracle's show last night. I was at a friend's house, so I forgot. All right, cheers, guys. Big bong rip. Have I gone to Disney? Yeah, I grew up in Florida. I was there when I was a kid. You're back at work, turn and burn, Docky. Burn, baby, burn. Damn, damn, damn. We love big bong rips. Hold them hits in. Hold them hits, son. C. That was tasty flavors. And a little bit of a sweat. Among other things. When your whole metabolism kicks in after a dab and you're like, thanks, Mom. Nice. A little citrus in the morning. So my advice to all of you is to stay away from the television. You know, we've got one in every room in this home, and they're all on all the time, you know, for the most part. Any room my mom is in. And many times she will have on mainstream media news, and it's just poison. It's straight freaking poison. And the newspapers know better. You wouldn't believe. We're going to talk about critical race theory here in a second. The term shouldn't exist. It's not a theory, all right? We did some bad shit, and it's not a theory. So whoever came up with the term critical race theory is an idiot, and that was stupid of you to do that. Okay, you're an idiot. It's not a theory. It's called history, okay? These are documented historic events, and we murdered millions and millions of people. We enslaved millions of people, and we murdered millions of people. That's not a theory, okay? It's what we did. And for some reason, America has a hard time admitting when they have any, you know, fault or any sort of responsibility involving wrongdoing. Seem to have a problem admitting that. It's really hard for us to come to terms with the fact that we've done some really bad things. We still do some really bad things. Systemic racism, that's bad. You know, that should end. But the narrative that I see on television, that paints a picture that's false. And it makes you believe that everything's just hunky-dory and everybody's perfect. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Get on YouTube. Go watch some podcasters. Get on Twitter. Click on some video links. Go watch some seminars and some some speeches and some events. And keep it real with yourselves. Because that picture that they're painting for you, that's a fantasy land. That's a lie, and that's bullshit. You don't even know what you're seeing. You've got nothing to base it off of, nothing to compare it to. Mom producing that vitamin C in raw form, she looks after you well. Yes, she does. Oh, your fat hand hit C by accident while you were coughing. I was wondering what that C was. I was like, C's for cannabis. Mainstream media is so fucking shit and cringe. Man, I see a pile of dead, burnt bodies on TV. I know, my mom did too. You know, and then they send her letters in the mail asking her for money. You know, please pay us for these poor children and this war that we could have prevented, the war that we fed. We built this war. And in 2015, man, 7 years ago, we were warned that this was going to happen. We could have stopped it. But this man was ignored. Now you've seen it. Now I've shown you the video and you've heard him speak. And that man's words will forever be on YouTube for you guys to listen to. And you'll always know the truth. That back in 2015, more than one person saw this coming, warned the world. You know, Professor Emeritus from Princeton University of Russian Relations studied it. He said for 50 years he'd been studying Russia. And said, look, man, what's going on in Ukraine is going to result in a horrible, horrible thing. And if we don't put an end to our behavior, this is what's going to happen. I do not hear what you are saying. Raytheon, Norfolk Grumman. Martin. Who's Martin with now? Martin Lockheed Martin. Right? I think it's so important that you guys hear this guy speak. It's so important, man. And you understand that this was in 2015. The deeper reason for current world events. Let's listen to that from Lee Camp. Lee?
Hey folks, what's up? I got a hell of a show for you. Hell of a moment of clarity for you today.
Show.
Sorry, still setting some things up. Thanks for joining me. Please take a second to share this, to let people know. As you
I'm going to speed him up.
Recall, I am in many ways the most censored comedian in America right now. TV show canceled, 8 years of episodes banned on YouTube globally. Podcast Moment of Clarity deleted from Spotify, but I'm gonna keep fighting if you will. So join me on patreon.com/LeeCamp. And let's see, we're going live on Rockfin as well. Please click subscribe on YouTube and all that shit, but the bell when you hit subscribe. And he's like, I know, yes, YouTube can delete me tomorrow. They very well might. This is my other channel. Their Jackson's channel is already banned globally, but this one continues on. Or you might be watching me on Rockfin, where hopefully I don't see them banning me anytime soon. But I'm gonna help you for you. However, and let me just, this is what I'll lead with. This is how we know that my stuff and a lot of the great content that you've been probably learning from, gaining from on Ukraine and what's going on in Ukraine, it could be banned from YouTube very soon. Google just wrote this, and I'm sorry I can't put it up on the screen. I don't have it.
Did you guys remember? This is I bet you he's going to talk about the email that I told you guys about a couple days ago that I got. It said any discussion, any disagreement with the narrative, if you condone the war, if you blah blah blah, if you blah blah blah, your content will be unmonetized on YouTube. Is that what he's about to say? On Google. Hey, Danny Anderson. Hey, Stephen Wyman. Good morning from Vermont. What's up, buddy? Philip Larson, I just left Ukraine for a week ago. Philip Larson.
There at the moment. But they sent out an email saying, "Dear publisher," this is from so Google owns YouTube, most of you know. They said, "Dear publisher, due to the war in Ukraine, we will pause monetization of content that exploits, dismisses, or condones the war." Now, that may sound kind of positive. Oh, great. They're going to, all right, yeah, don't condone war. Oh, cool. But what do they call condoning the war, right? Basically, if you don't give exactly the U.S. Western propaganda outlook of what's going on in Ukraine, then you are, quote unquote, condoning the war. Even though I've said a million times, I am anti-war. I'm anti the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm anti the expansion of NATO. I'm anti-Nazi. I'm anti all those things.
This man speaks for me. Understand that's why we're listening to him. Because every time I listen to Lee Camp, I agree with everything he says. Now, when you watch my show, if you appreciate what I say, then you should definitely appreciate what he says, and you should enjoy getting high with me and watching and listening to what he has to say.
Yeah, oh my goodness, you can be all those things at once. What? Who would have said that? Thank you, Bella, for the donation. Very kind of you. So to continue, they say, please note, we have already been enforcing on claims related to the war in Ukraine when they violated existing policies. Keep in mind, this is Google AdSense, which owns YouTube. They haven't banned anything that Fox News has ever done. Fox News has never put up a video. And I'm just throwing Fox News out there, obviously, also CNN, MSNBC, any of them. Never once has YouTube been like, yeah, Fox News, you put up racist content, we're going to demonetize it. No, Fox News is legit and excellent, according to YouTube. So is CNN, so is MSNBC. They say this pause includes, but is not limited to, claims that imply victims are responsible for their own tragedy or similar instances of victim blaming, such as claims that Ukraine is committing genocide or deliberately attacking its own citizens. I mean, it's hilarious. This is kind of like a
Donbass, 2014, Ukraine attacked Russian nationals, their own citizens. They shelled them, and over the years, Ukraine attacked their own citizens and has murdered 14,000 ethnic Russians. Let's see what Lee Camp has to say.
A couple of years ago, the CEO of YouTube said they had decreased viewing of what do they call it? Extremist content, I believe, by 70%, which sounds great. Oh, great. They're not showing people Nazi videos anymore. Guess what? Extremist content, they consider this extremist content. They consider what you and I are doing right now extremist content. Basically, if you are questioning the bullshit coming out of our bullshit media machine, then you are somehow, condoning the war, which is hilarious because, on so many levels. But what do you think the U.S. government is doing right now? They're condoning the war because the U.S. government is sending weapons to create war, to continue the war. They are telling Zelensky not to go into the peace process and not to actually end the war. So they're condoning the war, right? That's actually condoning the war.
Kind of hypocritical.
Sending weapons to continue war. So infuriating. But anyway, that was a side note. And here's the thing: when they say demonetize, it's not just demonetize; it's also not showing videos to anybody. So yes, it sounds nice to say demonetize, but that's not what it's far beyond demonetizing. Anyway, so that's why I'm increasing my focus on patreon.com/LeeCamp. That way, if you're there, if you follow me there, hopefully they won't delete me, although I'll have more updates on that coming in the coming weeks. Anyway, what I really want to get to is I read this is one of the best analysis I've seen of the deeper issues that are going on with the war in Ukraine, with the war between U.S. and Russia. Ukraine is a proxy war, as most of you watching this already know. In fact, the Wall Street Journal just today came out with an article where the headline was, "Why is Ukraine's military doing so well? NATO training." Well, okay, if the U.S. essentially runs NATO, which we know it does, and NATO trained the Ukrainian military, then doesn't that give credence to the fact that this is a proxy war between U.S. and Russia and that NATO was in Ukraine? I mean, Wall Street Journal just yelling it.
It's definitely adds to it.
Ukrainian military is NATO.
It's not the linchpin.
Armaments and weapons sent to them.
But it's definitely a good point.
But actually, before I
Cheers.
get to, I just told you I'm going to get to the deeper understanding of what is going on here globally with the war in Ukraine is just a tiny piece of a much larger puzzle, which I'm going to get to. It has some reference to what videos I've already done on the central banking system, the petrodollar, but it kind of reveals the whole chessboard in maybe a larger way than even just talking about the central banking. But before we even get to that, speaking of NATO and the U.S. training and running this war in Ukraine as a proxy war against Russia. This video, this is pretty mind-blowing. This is a French journalist, and it's in French with subtitles. But I have sent it to a friend of mine who speaks French, and she verified that it is a correct translation. Because I was worried that when you see a video where you see subtitles and it's like, let's say a Ukrainian soldier saying something, and underneath it says, "We're crazy and we like to eat babies," or a Russian soldier, and the subtitles say like, "Oh my goodness, I love shooting kittens," or whatever. I always wonder, like, how do we know the subtitles are accurate? Like, it's one thing if you see a video where you see the person saying the words, but who subtitled this? So I did send this to someone who actually speaks
Google Translate
French and verified that these subtitles are correct. So let's watch this video of a French journalist speaking about the war in Ukraine.
Et j'ai accompagné des volontaires français. Vous savez, il y a eu un appel au début du président Zelensky qui a demandé à des volontaires internationaux qui souhaitaient, qui avaient des expériences de combat. Et donc j'ai accompagné 3 Français, dont un qui a déjà été militaire avant, et 2 qui avaient combattu ensemble au Rojava contre les Kurdes, avec les Kurdes contre Daesh. Donc des gens qui avaient des expériences militaires. J'ai passé plusieurs jours avec eux, et j'ai eu la surprise, et eux aussi, de découvrir in fine que pour pouvoir aller dans l'armée ukrainienne, eh bien, c'est les Américains qui sont à la manœuvre. C'est-à-dire que nous, on a failli se faire arrêter. On a été confronté à un Américain qui veut nous dire « Ici, c'est moi qui commande, c'est pas les Ukrainiens ».
Dude, what that guy just said is insane. So he said these 3 Frenchmen came over to Ukraine to fight for the Ukrainian army against Russia. And they were confronted by the CO was an American. And he says, Americans are determining who gets to go in to the military in Ukraine.
Qui commande, c'est moi qui commande. Je parle de la formation et de l'enrôlement dans l'armée ukrainienne de volontaires internationaux. Voilà. Le type a même donné son nom. C'est un ancien de la guerre d'Irak. J'ai fait mes vérifications. C'est un reportage que l'on peut retrouver dans le Figaro Magazine de cette semaine. J'ai été extrêmement surpris de la violence des propos de cet Américain, du fait qu'il nous a pris pour des volontaires au début, quand il a vu qu'on était des journalistes, il nous a dit dégager, après il était un peu plus... mais en l'occurrence, c'est moi qui commande, vous enlevez les puces de vos portables, surtout les puces internationaux, on vous donnera d'autres puces, etc. Et ensuite, on signe un contrat jusqu'à la fin de la guerre. Et qui est à la manœuvre? Eh bien, ce sont les Américains. Je l'ai vu de mes yeux vus. C'est pas, alors, ce n'est pas l'armée américaine officiellement, évidemment, vous comprenez, on va pas le dire. Mais en l'occurrence, c'est quand même quelque chose d'américain. C'est quand même assez significatif. On sait que là, hier, ils ont envoyé une centaine de nouvelles armes qui s'appellent des Switchblade. On est des sortes de drones qu'on envoie par mortier et ensuite on peut téléguider des nouvelles armes.
Mortar-fired drones?
Donc ils ont quand même opéré par rapport à ce que dit.
Are you guys reading that?
Moi j'ai eu l'impression un petit peu quelque part que cette guerre, au-delà de l'aspect romantique, je veux dire, moi j'ai l'impression d'être avec les brigades internationales et in fine je me retrouve avec le Pentagone.
The Pentagon. Dude, that's freaking crazy.
So that is pretty incredible. This is a French journalist going to Ukraine as a journalist and finding that Americans are in charge of accepting people into the country, accepting and controlling journalists. And he said it was not officially American military, but that the person claiming to be in charge was clearly former American military because he was a veteran of Iraq. And
it's a lot of information.
Like the French, right? French media is not told to give that standpoint, right? That's the turd in the punch bowl because the French are aligning with the U.S. in this whole thing. Now they've clearly been forced into that.
So basically, what's up is we're at war. We've got soldiers fighting in this war. You know, America it's not just a proxy war anymore. We're literally there. Our soldiers are there.
French and the Germans wanted to try and keep some sort of cooperation with Russia, but have not been allowed to, thanks to U.S. pressure. We're going to get more into that in a second. But the video is pretty amazing because he says quite clearly, you know, I was kind of shocked to see that it is the Americans in charge of it. And then he talks about how the U.S. had just sent Switchblade drones to Ukraine. But that is a tiny amount of what the U.S. is sending to Ukraine. Hundreds of millions of dollars Biden and Congress have allotted to sending weaponry and other kinds of aid to Ukraine to keep this war going and make sure it keeps going. Because the U.S. does not want this to end. They do not want any sort of peace agreement. They want to, what's the expression people have been passing around? They want to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian. And that's what this is. It is, let's fight Russia endlessly until we've killed every Ukrainian. I mean, it truly is repulsive. I mean, honestly, it's tough to even sum up the horror of what's going on over there. And as I've said, you don't have to believe the reports, many of which are later debunked, or maybe all of which are later debunked, that Russia is aiming at civilians, to know that war kills a lot of innocent civilians. And people don't just die from the bombs. Innocent civilians don't just die from bombs. They die from not being able to get medical care, from not being able to get food or clean water. They die for a lot of reasons. War destroys societies and destroys lives. And the U.S. wants to keep this one going as long as possible. And they want people waving a big Ukrainian flag to keep this war going and make sure there is no process. It truly is mind-blowing. So on that front, with that understanding, let's get to, this is a damn good analysis written by Michael Hudson and reprinted at Popular Resistance. 1 second here. Oh, by the way, if you want to see more videos like this, please become a member at patreon.com/Lee Camp. The lowest tier is $1.25 a week, and you get all the exclusive content. If you sign up at $10 a month, you get a free PDF of my book, Bullet Points Punchline. So I hope you'll do that. Become a member at patreon.com/Lee Camp. All right, so here is the Popular Resistance reposted article. He titled it "The Dollar Devours the Euro," but it's really much deeper than that. So I want to dig into some of this because I think it is really an impressive analysis. So he says, it's not clear that today's escalation of the new Cold War was planned over a year ago with serious strategy associated with America's plan to block Nord Stream 2 as part of the aim of blocking Western Europe and NATO from seeking prosperity by mutual trade and investment with China and Russia. So
do you remember when we talked about Ted Cruz on here and that Nord Stream 2 pipeline and him blocking those? Do you remember that? And I said, Ted Cruz, I don't appreciate what he's doing. You know, he's trying to block that pipeline. And I said, if Russia wants energy and they want to do business with Germany, I said, who the fuck are we to block that Nord Stream 2 pipeline? Remember, we talked about this before that Ukrainian war thing started. You guys remember? We talked about it on the show. And what I'd said about Ted Cruz was it's interesting to see a politician, though, using his power to get his words out there, unlike, you know, where you see like the Squad, they'll get on Twitter and tweet shit. Ted Cruz is actually holding up legislation, you know, like force the vote would have been great. It's the Squad, you know, stuff like that. You know, use your power. You know, you become a one-term politician like AOC said she would do to pass important legislation. Whatever. Didn't happen. Not going to happen.
So Nord Stream 2, many of you may already know, giant pipeline, massive pipeline that had already been constructed between Russia and Germany. And Europe gets 40% of their oil, their gas from Russia. Now they're trying urgently to undo that, thanks to what's going on right now. But it doesn't, you know, it's not changing tomorrow. And Russia has just demanded that they pay in rubles, which has helped the price of the ruble. And Russia did that in response to all the sanctions against them. But the U.S., it was very evident, I mean, to those that are paying attention, that the U.S. was going to find some sort of way to stop not just that pipeline, but the Belt and Road Initiative coming from China to up to the EU, other economic arrangements that cooperation that was happening increasingly between Russia, China, and the EU. And so here we have it. Now, you may say, well, Putin's the one who invaded. It's true, but the U.S. knew what they were doing by encircling and filling Ukraine with NATO weaponry and et cetera. Anyway, we'll get more into that. Getting ahead of myself. As President Biden in U.S. national security reports announced, China was seen as the major enemy. China's growth was recognized as posing the ultimate terror, prosperity through socialism. Now, most of you know, China's not fully socialist. There is a lot of capitalism and capitalist money in China. There are people getting very rich in China, but it has a socialist industrial base in many ways. So I think it's easy to hear, you know, fighting China and fighting socialism and go, well, China's not socialist. They have capitalists, a lot of capitalism there too. So yes, that's true. However, it is socialist industrialization in most ways. So to continue on, he says, socialist industrialization always has been perceived to be the great enemy of the rentier economy. And I like that term, the rentier economy. I mean, you basically spend most of your life trying to rent your life back from corporations, from corporate America, especially for those of you, and it's many of us. I'm lucky that I get to pursue my passion for the most part, but most people don't. Most people, their passion is a side hustle. Most people have to take jobs, and many people convince themselves they enjoy their jobs. But most people have to take jobs they hate, or jobs they dislike, or jobs they mildly dislike, or jobs that they don't necessarily dislike, but it's not their passion in life. We'll just leave it at that. And so you work those jobs to basically rent a life. Why should you have to rent a life? Why should your life be something you have to rent back? Shouldn't you just have a life? I mean, we're free for like a minute, and then we're put into wage slavery most of our lives. And many people die due to that wage slavery, right? You talk about like coal miners dying at 45 from black lung, or soldiers dying at young ages because they signed up to pay for college, or plenty of people that die from you could go as small as someone who hated being a waitress back in the days when everybody could smoke inside. Hated being a waitress, but they worked at a really smoky club and got emphysema because they were fucking surrounded in cigar smoke all day long, or whatever the fuck. Like, people take jobs that harm their health in plenty of ways. Even if we don't get into what they say sitting is the new smoking. If you sit it all day, then you're also not going to live that long, I guess. But anyway, that may be getting too deep into the weeds there. But so to continue, he says, socialist industrialization always has been perceived to be the great enemy of the rentier economy that has taken over most nations in the century since World War I ended, and especially since the 1980s. The result today is a clash of economic systems: socialist industrialization versus neoliberal finance capitalism. That makes the new Cold War against China an implicit opening act of what threatens to be a long, drawn-out World War III. The U.S. strategy is to pry away China's most likely economic allies, especially Russia, Central Asia, South Asia, and East Asia. The question was where to start the carve-up and isolation. So, you don't have to be a real close observer to notice that the U.S. does this with countries that we can't just full-on attack economically or straight up with bombs and missiles. We try and carve off pieces to slowly harm them. And that's one of the reasons for this made-up Uyghur genocide, which I've done coverage on Redacted tonight. If you want to see the full breakdown of how hilarious the whole Uyghur genocide in China is. And by the way, if you get them to really talk about it, they don't even call it a genocide. They call it a cultural genocide, because they know, and everyone knows, that China is not killing Uyghurs. But these reports are hilariously false. And you can go to China, you go tour China and see Uyghurs walking around everywhere and see mosques and things and go, oh, that's funny. I thought they were all murdered, but no, turns out not. But anyway, part of the reasoning behind that is the U.S. wants to carve off that region of China and make it a Uyghur independent region. So the U.S. is doing it with that area, or trying to do it. They're trying to do it with Hong Kong. They're trying to carve off pieces and interrupt economic cooperation between countries, such as between Russia and China. So let's keep going here. Russia was seen as presenting the greatest opportunity to begin isolating both from China and from the NATO Eurozone. A sequence of increasingly severe and hopefully fatal sanctions against Russia, they mean hopefully for the US, hopefully fatal sanctions against Russia was drawn up. And by the way, Biden just admitted this, right? That he wants this to be fatal for the current ruling class of Russia, because Biden admitted, remember, he did that ad lib in that speech where he said, Putin cannot, for God's sake, this man can't remain in power. Well, it's fine for you or me to think, yeah, Putin shouldn't be in power. But to have that be a U.S. policy means that the U.S. policy is regime change in Russia. And if that's the truth, if the U.S. policy right now is regime change in Russia, then they've admitted this is a proxy war. They've admitted they're fighting in Ukraine to try and create regime change in Russia. But they don't want to admit that. So Biden, with his little ad lib, accidentally revealed this is a proxy war to try and create regime change in Russia. Russia was seen as presenting the greatest opportunity to begin isolation. A sequence of increasing severe and hopefully fatal sanctions against Russia was drawn up to block NATO from trading with it. All that was needed to ignite the geopolitical earthquake was a casus belli, a cause for war.
All right, so I'm down to 8 viewers. That's the wrong button. There we go. All right, I am out of here. You guys take care. Enjoy your mornings. I'll see you on the next show.